Live from the Real Asset Queen studios in Kalispell, Montana, this is the Real Asset Queen Live, the one and only show about connecting people, process, and money. Each week, you'll hear mind-blowing interviews from top industry thought leaders, as well as actionable tips and strategies that you can implement in your finances, business, or investing life. Please welcome your host, a former healthcare executive turned entrepreneur, investor, and efficiency expert, Michelle Kimbrough.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Real Asset Queen. We have a great guest today. We're going to be talking about something a little bit different, a different way to invest in real estate without renters. So we have a guest, Kevin Shortell, with us, and we're going to be talking about the secret to building wealth through real estate notes, a topic that I am super excited to learn more about. I know just minimal, but it's a great way to invest without the headaches of 2 a.m. Exploding pipes and toilets and all that other stuff. Kevin is very, very experienced in this field. He has a podcast. He's been on national morning shows across the nation, ABC, NBC, CBS. Kevin, you can let me know if I missed any of them. He is a best-selling author, and he has over $30 million in note investing that he has done, and he teaches people how to do this. So I'm really excited to have him today. So Kevin, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background, how you got into note investing, and my key question is, tell us a fun fact about Kevin.
Sure. I got started note investing, over 30 years ago, and it really started for more traditional real estate, right? And I was always attracted to that, read all the books, going through high school and everything, and I knew what I wanted to do and get into real estate and make all my money. And of course, reality hits a lot of times, right? You're out trying to find deals. I didn't have any money to start with, so I was trying to wholesale real estate. It's a traditional path, I think, that a lot of people take. And my wife introduced me to somebody who had just made, and this is going back 30, more than 32. My wife and I have been married for 32 years. So it goes back, I guess, a year or two before that. She introduced me to somebody who had just made $15,000 just on finding a note and bringing it to a buyer. So it was wholesaling, but instead of real estate, it was the debt on the property. It was a note. And I'd never heard of that before. And, $15,000 was a heck of a lot of money back then, still a lot of money today, but I mean, it was really impressive. So that got me on the path to go, well, wait a minute, maybe I've been doing this wrong the whole time. And we partnered up, and he had all the connections in the industry. I had some of the marketing and those sorts of things to negotiate and such. And we went from a nobody in the industry to a top 10 within about 6 months. Then we got within our first year, probably a top 5 company, and really just went from there. And because of the scalability of the business, you can do the business. I'm in Central Florida, but we do business throughout the United States. And so our backyard is not limited as it is for most traditional real estate investors who canvass neighborhoods and look for key things. We go to where the deals are nationwide. So it's been a long journey, but I'll tell you what's been interesting, Michelle, is to see it go from such a niche. There was always real estate and this note thing, as it was known back then, the note thing. What does that mean? So very few people knew about it, but it was a multi-billion and now $trillion industry overall. But it has grown now so rapidly since the last crash that it has gone to the pinnacle, I think, of all real estate. And it certainly is on the radar screen of all investors, not just real estate investors, but people from the stock market, people from crypto are looking at notes as its own asset class, as it should be. So it's gone through tremendous growth and opportunity. And it's gotten a lot easier today than it was when I first started.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, I remember back in the day, people would talk about notes, but it was very much on the down low. It wasn't, on Main Street or anything like that. And you really didn't understand the mechanics of it because there wasn't a lot of people doing it. So what about a fun fact about Kevin?
A fun fact about me, I guess it's in my background here. You can, whoops, over here, whoops, other side. There we go. Facing backwards. There's a picture on my wall back there. I guess that would be a fun fact. It's a whole article about my great grandfather, who was the welterweight boxing champion of the world. His name is Jack Britton, and he's a Hall of Fame boxer. He has records and such that'll never be broken. And so I grew up in my uncle was a contender. My grandfather fought, so I kind of grew up in a little bit of a boxing family there, which a lot of people don't know about.
That must have been quite interesting growing up.
Yeah,
I can only imagine.
Yeah, no, it was a lot of fun. I don't remember meeting him, Jack Britton, 'cause he died, I think the year I was born, but just one of the all-time greats. So I have our family has his buckle and all the other things that comes with it. So pretty interesting.
That's pretty cool. Thanks for sharing that. So let's launch off with, what is note investing and how is it different from, traditional investing in real estate, whether it be a single family home or multifamily? So what is it and what's the difference?
Sure. The easiest way for me to describe it for those who have no idea, think of it this way. If you're making your mortgage payment to Bank of America, you now make that payment to me. That's the simplest way I can put it. So I can go to Bank of America and buy your note. I don't need your permission as the borrower. In fact, all of you who are making payments on mortgages, you probably have received a letter before saying you no longer make your payments here. You now make your payments over here, right? You don't pay Wells Fargo anymore. You pay Bank of America, something like that. Now, technically, those are servicing rights. But my point being that the notes and the mortgages that act as a lien on the property, which is the debt of the property, that's what we buy. So when I buy your mortgage payment, you still own the property, you still take care and maintain the property and pay the taxes and everything else. I just receive the monthly cash flow. And that's why you mentioned the title of my book, which I got one right here, but Real Estate Without Renters is just that. Certainly, and again, I'm not against renting property at all. It's a great way to build wealth, but it does come with a lot of baggage, which is, as you mentioned, the landlording and the phone calls and the ongoing expenses and the problems with the properties and those sorts of things. I've had rental properties before. I've done a lot of real estate, traditional real estate before. But when you own the note and you own the debt, you step away from all of that. You don't call Bank of America, hey, our roof is leaking, you got to send somebody over. They just own the debt on the property. So that's really what we do. We buy the lien or the debt on the property, get that cash flow, but we don't have any ownership in the property. That stays with the borrower. And because of the nature of these loans, these are long-term investments that you could buy a note and have it for 30 years. So it can be long-term, but in advanced techniques, the market today makes these assets very liquid. So in other words, if I bought a 30-year note, because I know some people hear that and go, I mean, I didn't be around for 30 years, or I can't wait that long. Well, you don't have to, because that asset, that income stream is a sellable asset. So if I own a note, I could turn around and sell that note in the open marketplace. And in fact, I can even sell what's called a partial in our business, which is I can just sell a part of that note. So if I'm entitled to 180 payments, maybe, Michelle, I sell you 90 of those payments for lump sum. So you give me a lump sum today, you collect the next 90 payments, and then I get the 90 payments back at the end of it. So there's a lot of creative ways, especially when you have the amount of liquidity. And as I said, as the industry has grown and we have more people involved in this industry, it's opened more opportunities for trading, buying notes and selling notes on an ongoing basis. So that's very different than more traditional real estate, because I'm sure we have, people buy property and turn around, just fix it up and sell it and those sorts of things. You make your money once on a note. I can make money multiple times because of the fact that I can partial out my note. I also don't deal with the headaches involved with the property. And there's a lot of government incentives that help people stay in their homes to prevent foreclosure. And that's another part of the business that is overlooked, is we do a great thing for borrowers. For example, in the last crash, you had people who owed a lot more than their house was worth, and just looking at what do I do? I'll never be able to pay this back. We were able to come in and buy those notes so inexpensively that, it might be $100,000 property that they owe $150,000 on, because at one point it was worth 160. Now it's worth 100. That's what happened in the last crash, but they still owe 150,000. We can come in and buy that note at $30,000. If we buy it at 30, there's a lot we can do. Right? I'll forgive the extra debt that you have. I'll bring it down to this. I'll forbear this. I'll do that. I'll use government funds. So the social aspect of that, for those who it might be important to, we really help people stay in their homes, because we do give it the focus and attention versus foreclosing upon people. So it's a nice way where you can make double-digit returns. You can make lump sum in the business. You can do a combination of both, but you're also helping people stay in their properties, which is a nice thing.
Yeah, I really like that component, and I didn't think to frame it that way. And there is a very positive social impact of that, because it's very disruptive, if somebody is evicted or somebody is foreclosed on, and especially if it's a family, there's multiple members that are affected, and it can be very traumatizing, right?
Totally. I mean, when you have a big bank, like I mentioned, Wells Fargo, which is, the largest bank lender. There's larger lenders than Wells Fargo that are non-banks, by the way, like Quicken Loans and Rocket Mortgage, all that stuff. But Wells Fargo, they have so many loans, they can't possibly give the attention. Their loss mitigation departments have shrunk to the point, if someone doesn't pay, the traditional message was, we're going to foreclose, and you're just a number. They're not really reaching out to work with you. But I guarantee you, if you bought one of those notes from Bank of America and you invested $20, $30, $40, $50,000 of your own money in that note, you're going to do everything you can to get that note reperforming again. So it's a completely different mindset on how we approach these. And, when you go back and look at the last crisis, the government couldn't work it out. So Wall Street came in and saw an opportunity to scoop up houses, and that ultimately ended up failing. So it really came down to entrepreneurs like myself that bought the bad debt, because there's good debt and bad debt, performing and non-performing, if you will, debt that we purchase at varying prices. And with those comes varying exit strategies on how you manage your investment. So where we can make great returns, but at the same time, we can also help people a lot more than a bank is willing, in most cases, to do.
Yeah, and you kind of are just a number when you're with somebody big like that, and it's very dehumanized, because somebody may, like in the last crash, somebody may have lost their job, fell upon hard times, they're not bad people, but they just need,
Randy rough patch.
Yeah, they just need a hand up, So walk us through the process of purchasing a note, and what are maybe some of the key items that somebody should look out, for when they're, analyzing a note, because I'm sure there's some sort of analysis that goes behind this. So, if it's, a good fit for you or not a good fit, like we do in multifamily and other aspects of real estate. So walk us through what a typical purchase would look like.
Sure. And I'll use the same parallel of real estate, because most people are familiar with real estate. We all get it. We've either been a landlord or been a tenant at some point in time in our lives. So most people get the whole real estate aspect. Well, when you think of, if you're a real estate investor, there's varying degrees of quality in a piece of real estate. It doesn't take, for example, any real skill or knowledge to buy a home on the open market and pay asking price or more, right? I mean, there's virtually no talent in doing that. Anybody can do that. And that's not what real estate investors look for. Real estate investors look for that undervalued property that they can improve to make it more valuable. If I can put 20,000 into a property, but it improves the value by 60, that makes a lot of sense, regardless of what I paid for the overall property. Now, some real estate investors might take a piece of property that just needs carpet and paint and that sort of thing, like a light rehab. Okay, and you'll probably pay a little bit more of a premium for a property like that versus somebody who's willing to, I got to replace the roof, the plumbing, the electrical, I got to redo. They're willing to take on more risk. So with more risk, obviously there's a lower price, right? So there's a direct parallel there. So same thing in the note business. In the business that I'm in, there's a degree of note quality. There's something on the high end that I call turnkey notes. For most beginners, that's the easiest note you can buy. And my definition of a turnkey note is that there's at least 30% equity in the property. So again, to use simple numbers, because we're broadcasting to people throughout the United States. So whatever the property values are in your area, I'm going to do simple math, right? So if you've got a $100,000 loan on a property and they owe, sorry, it's a $100,000 property, my apologies, $100,000 property, and they owe $70,000 on it, they've got 30% equity. So that's a good positive thing because I'm going to pay less than that $70,000 for that note because we buy notes at a discount. Okay. Mm-hmm. So that's the first thing that I assess is, well, what's my risk involved in that? Well, think about it this way. If I'm paying $60,000 for that loan, but it's backed by a property worth 100, I've eliminated or at least alleviated my risk in a case like that. So a turnkey note has equity in the property because the property's the collateral, right? That's our fallback. Worst case scenario is we end up with the property if the people can't pay. So we look at that first and go, all right, they've got 30% equity. And what about what we call seasoning in the business, which is payment history? Okay. If somebody has 2 years, let's say you have two notes and everything is equal, the price, the property, everything is equal. This one, though, they've made over here, they've made one payment. And on this one, they've made 12 payments. Which one would you buy? Well, give me the one with 12 because they've proven themselves for a year that they can afford those payments. So we call that seasoning, payment history. So we'd like to see in a turnkey note 2 years of seasoning. So we've got a borrower who's been making payments successful in what's called a payment history, which is verifiable through servicing companies. The payment history is good for 2 years. They've got 30% equity in that. And then it comes down to yield. At what discount, at what price will I pay to adjust my return on investment? See, I can't buy a note. Let's say the note's written at 8% interest. So that's what the consumer is paying on their loan, 8% interest. Well, I'm not going to pay 100% of the unpaid balance for that loan. Otherwise, I'd be making 8%. So I'm going to pay something less for that. And that's going to increase my yield. Doesn't change the payment or the interest of the consumer, but it changes my return on investment. In other words, going back to my example, if it's a $70,000 loan at 8% and I pay $70,000 for it, well, simple math, I'm making 8%. If I pay $60,000 for that loan based on 70, my return is going to be higher than that. So on a turnkey note today, because of inventory and such, you can buy these notes anywhere from a 9 to 12% annualized return, and it's backed by something that is more valuable than the money that you have in it by a good margin. So it makes a nice, safe investment. And that's a very passive type of investment, a turnkey note. On the other spectrum of things, we also buy non-performing notes. And these are notes that people haven't made a payment for 6 months, for a year. I was looking at some the other day. They haven't made a payment in 4 years.
Wow.
And you go, well, what's the problem there? And this is where the due diligence, not to deviate, but that's where your due diligence and understanding the numbers and the story comes into play there. But obviously, there's a much different price on a note where the people haven't made payments for 4 years versus a simple turnkey note. So now I'm in the realm of non-performing notes, and I might pick up, using that same number, $100,000 property, $70,000 loan, I might pick that up for $20,000, $25,000. It's still backed by a $100,000 property, but I'm in it for way less because it's a broken note, if you will. Just like your real estate investor is looking for that broken home that they can fix up and increase the value, I can buy broken notes, non-performing loans, and fix them. Then I can communicate with the borrower and see if there's financial assistance available from the state. Which, by the way, there's a program that funded the states $10 billion, which was divided throughout the United States, that states are paying $30,000 to $50,000 to help people catch up on their loan. That money goes to the note holder, by the way, regardless of what I paid. In other words, I could pay $25,000 for a note where they owe 70, right? And get them paying again, have them qualify for this program, because if they haven't made a payment in 4 years, they have what's called an arrearage account, right? Those are all the payments plus the penalties and everything else from the 4 years that they haven't made. Well, maybe that comes to $20,000. Okay, I paid $25,000 for the note. I have them apply for the state program that nobody knows about, government program, but part of the problem with government programs is the people who need it don't know about it. So we inform them about it. They apply. 90 days later, I get $20,000 from the state. I can forgive the loan. I can stretch out the loan. I can lower the payments so that people can stay in the home. And now I invested 25. I got 20 back. I'm only $1,000 into a deal that's paying me whatever the monthly payment is. But now all of a sudden my yield just went through the absolute roof, right? So if I bought the note and I'm making 10%, but now I get $20,000 back, I only have 5 in it, I'm making 20, 30% on or more on my money. And the borrowers now have a reworked loan that they can afford to pay.
Yeah. And they get to stay in their home.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's amazing. That is just amazing. So a couple of things that I heard there, Kevin, when you're, I guess, a novice starting out in this, things you want to look for are turnkey notes. So something that has 30%, I guess, equity in the note, and that it is seasoned. So somebody has made, 12 months, I guess, would be a safe bet for a novice. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, an advanced investor like myself, we consider 6 months of seasoning, 6 months of payment history to be good. You can buy notes, and I've bought notes where there's no seasoning, but it has to meet certain specifications and such to do that. But for somebody who's new, when you see at least 12 months, you're right, of a pay history, and who knows, maybe they're late every once in a while, but they catch up and that sort of thing. Totally fine. Equity in the property. So I always take the approach of you look at risk first. How much money am I in this deal and what's it backed by? What's the value of the collateral? That's where the real estate becomes important to us. Not that we're managing it, not that we're fixing it, but worst case scenario is if we have to foreclose, which is such a teeny tiny part of what we do in the business. If we have to, though, because you have to think a smart investor. Hope for best case scenario, they pay, everything works out. Worst case scenario, we take the property back. Well, my example of a non-performing note, if I pay $25,000 and it's backed by a house that's worth $70,000 or $100,000, where can I lose money? Because ultimately, if I have to take that property back, maybe a deed in lieu instead of a foreclosure, I got a $100,000 property for 25 grand. Well,
right.
If I have to foreclose, I can set my strike price at 70,000 plus the arrearage account. So that probably put me up at 90 grand. Nobody's going to bid higher than that at the foreclosure sale. So I get the property back that way. And then what would I do with it? Whatever I want, right? I could turn around if I only paid 25 grand. I could sell it to somebody for 80 on a quick sale, or I could sell it to somebody with financing.
Do you own or finance? Yeah, I was going to say you can rinse and repeat, right? With a new person.
And then I create my own note, which I can keep, or I can turn around and sell, or I can sell part of. Yeah, so it gives you so much flexibility because the note business, going back to my initial statement of how it was a niche in the industry, it's really real estate. It's the opposite side of the same coin. So with real estate, you have real property. That's the physical property itself and the man-made improvement on it. And then the finance side is the note side. That's really all it is. We're just in the finance side of the business. Most everybody listening and watching us right now has been in the note business, but they're on the paying side, right? They're paying that mortgage, you're paying that auto loan. That's a note. Auto loans are the same thing. So if you're making payments on an IOU, any kind of loan, credit card, whatever, that's a note. You're on the paying side. What I teach people is how to get on the receiving side of that income stream. That's really what it is.
Yeah, that's super.
We're the bank. I mean, that's really it. We somebody else created the note, and then we're just taking over what they created. So part of our due diligence is figuring out, did they create a good quality note? Did they qualify the borrower? Did they paper it up the right way? In other words, the right documentation, the right verbiage is in the documents. Is the collateral in good condition? Do we have insurance on there? All these other sorts of things, the variables we look at to grade the quality. Just like, again, to parallel with real estate. If you're a rehabber, what do? You go and you walk through the property. This is going to cost me that. This is going to cost me this. What's it worth now? What's it going to cost me to fix up? And at the end of the day, what's it going to be ultimately worth? So there's a lot of similarities into what we do on the note side. we evaluate the note. I look at the numbers, I look at the story, and I try to come up with what's the most likely scenario, especially if it's a non-performing note. What's the best approach to this person? Do they have intent in staying or not on this? Could they possibly be someone who would qualify for the government program, or do I do a simple loan modification without the government program? Do I go towards the property and relieve them of a foreclosure on their record by offering a deed in lieu of foreclosure? Do I do a deed in lieu of foreclosure with a cash incentive for them to help them with moving and all that? Or ultimately, is it a vacant property that has a note on it and I can't track down the borrower, and then I have to foreclose?
And take possession.
Again, most of the time we can track, even if people vacate, even if the people threw up their hands and left a home and it's vacant, on those, normally we can track that person down today. I mean, social media, we're also connected, to this world these days. You track people down, they go, what, I can sign this and I'm done. I don't owe you any money. You're not going to come after a deficiency judgment, and I'm not going to have a foreclosure on my record. Where do I sign?
Yeah, that's pretty attractive, right? Because a foreclosure kind of hangs around for quite a while, and it could, if you had a temporary, fall on bad luck or something, and you had something like that, it takes a while for you to prove yourself back to the market that you're worthy to make payments again and purchase a home. So if you had somebody that could partner with you that could remove that liability, you could get a fresh start and nobody would know the difference that you fell on bad times.
A lot of people don't realize. They think, well, okay, so if the property goes through foreclosure, after foreclosure, it's over and done. That's not the case. Most states have a deficiency judgment clause that says if a note holder, whether it be a bank or someone like myself, if we're not made whole at a foreclosure sale, we can still pursue that person for a deficiency judgment. And deficiency judgments, if you've got a boat or a car or something like that, guess what? That may be sold and gone. They can garnish wages. So it can get even worse for a person. And part of the issue is most people don't know this. They've never been through foreclosure before. They're in a tough spot. The worst thing they do is they clam up. They don't want to answer the phone. They don't want to reply. So part of what we have to do is go, hey, look, we can help you, but we got to hear from you. You've got to open this door of communication, because again, at the prices that we're able to buy these notes, it gives us flexibility to forgive debt or to forbear debt and add it to the end of the loan. We can stretch out the payments. We can do temporary loan modifications. If they're running, as you said, people run through rough patches in their lives. If we have to temporarily lower their payment to help them out, and that's fine. It still has to make financial sense, right? We're not a charity, but if it makes financial sense, we can do that. And when you know how to buy these notes and buy them at the prices we do, that's why it's such a small amount of times that you ultimately have to foreclose on somebody, because you give them so many better options.
Yeah, whereas I think you touched on it earlier, if you're with a large mortgage lender or a big bank, they're not going to do that, because you then are reduced to a number and they don't care about your story. Maybe some of them do, but they don't have the tools or leverage to create these innovative things. They're probably given a template of here's a checklist, here's the algorithm, you got these solutions here, and then that's that. So I really like the creative aspect of this, helping people stay in their home. I think that's amazing. I really like that.
If you don't mind, let me touch on the banking system, the way it works, because again, you're not taught this stuff in school. You're not taught this in business school or anything. And how the whole mortgage system works in the United States today. When you go to a bank and want to borrow money to buy a home, you have to, number one, promise to pay it back. Well, that's your promissory note. And the promissory note is, I promise to pay $100,000 over 30 years, monthly payments at this interest rate. That's all the note is. It's your promise to pay. But that's not good enough to walk into a bank and say, I promise to pay you back. And they're going to give you $100,000. They're going to say, yeah, but what if you don't? So you have to sign a mortgage. Okay. So you give, by the way, everybody says I have to get a mortgage. You don't get a mortgage at a bank. You give a mortgage. What you get at the bank is money. That's how wrong our wording is on this, and where the education comes into place. So you're borrowing money. You have to promise to pay it back in writing. That's your note. And then that note is attached to a security agreement called a mortgage. Now, that mortgage might be a deed of trust type of mortgage, or more traditional mortgage. And that's the one that says, if I don't pay you back, then you can foreclose upon me. And then that breaks down into judicial or non-judicial type of foreclosure. But here's what happens behind the scene, right? You sign a document, and the bank, you promise to pay them back, and you give them the paper. That's why we're still called the paper business. So the bank now owns the note and the mortgage. What the bank does is turn right around and sells this paper to Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac and Ginnie Mae. Okay, those are all acronyms for government entities, quasi-private entities. Fannie Mae, Federal National Mortgage Association; Ginnie Mae, the Ginnie Mae Government Home Loan Guarantee. All these sort of things. So the banks sell that paper. They don't hold on to your note, put it in a safe. They turn around and sell it. And guess what? They sell it at a discount. Okay, to Fannie Mae. So now Fannie Mae has this, but the bank is still here representing Fannie Mae. Okay, so the bank is acting as a servicing company. They're collecting the mortgage payment, which for most people is principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. 4 ingredients make up the monthly payment. So this monthly payment comes to the bank. The bank passes through the monthly payments to Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, or Ginnie Mae, and they retain the servicing of the taxes and the insurance that are prepaid. And the banks make a lot of float on that. So that's why banks actually sell servicing rights as well. So here's what changed with the Dodd-Frank Act as a result of the last crash. What Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac used to do back here holding this paper, they're not receiving the payments anymore because the consumer's not paying, so the bank is not passing anything through. Fannie Mae tells its servicer, the bank, foreclose. Right? Now, that's a lengthy and expensive process, especially for banks who have so many of these things going on. Attorneys are dragging things out and getting those nice, juicy fees. It's very expensive for a bank to go through those foreclosures. Enter the Dodd-Frank Act. The Dodd-Frank Act fundamentally changed our lending business, and it has pushed our industry to the pinnacle. If notes are not a part of your portfolio, you are missing out on one of the biggest opportunities as a result of this government legislation. What Dodd-Frank said was, okay, we don't want to have all these people face foreclosure, because we had over 10 million people facing foreclosure in that last crash. So they said, here's what we're going to do. If the banks have bad assets, meaning non-performing notes on their books, we're going to penalize them because they were the ones who originated the loan, right? So they have some liability. We're going to penalize them up to 10 times. Okay. And when their portfolio gets to about 7%, they're going to be under of non-performing assets on their books. We're going to penalize them up to 10 times. So I'm going to use simple numbers. Let's say you're a bank, Michelle, and you have $1 million worth of non-performing notes on your books, and you're upwards of 7% of your whole portfolio. Well, the banking industry is going to come in, the mortgage regulatory industry is going to say, hey, Michelle, your bank has to hold $10 million now in cash reserve based upon that $1 million in bad debt. That 10 million you put in cash reserve, you can't touch, you can't lend, you can't do anything. What would your response be?
Which goes
$1 million off my books. You're holding up 10 million.
Yeah, because that goes against fractional reserve banking.
Of course, and opportunity cost and everything else. So now what happens is the banks will say, we got to get that off our books. Well, we can't do it by going through foreclosure, because that might take us 12 months. And think of now we're talking hundreds of millions. I used $1 million, but imagine it's, add some zeros to that, hundreds of millions of dollars that they can't lend, they can't do anything to, lost revenue held up by 1/10 of that. So what do? We got to get rid of these quick. We can't foreclose. So what they do now is they bundle up these notes and sell them in bulk at big auctions. Okay. So Fannie Mae alone has about $18 billion per year in sale of these notes.
Wow.
That's what happens today. So there's still always a small degree of foreclosures. Foreclosures are down to around 2 to 4%, I think, the last time I looked, of all the notes, because there's always going to be a degree where they will go ahead and foreclose. But for the most part, bundle up those notes and sell them, because they can sell them next month and they're off the books. Now, the big companies that buy them, they might buy 5,000 notes at one time. Okay, might cost them, $600 million, and they buy this bundle of 5,000 notes. Do you think they looked at every single note in there? Do you think they have any clue? Nah, Look, there's 3 pools. This pool has 5,000. This one has 1,500. This one has 3,000. We're going to buy this one because we saw some things in here that we like. The rest we know we're probably going to lose on. So we'll just carve those off and sell those to smaller investors. Hello, that's us.
That's where, okay.
That's us. So that's where that inventory flow comes through. So when you talk in terms of inventory, that's just one source, but think of it, that's a big source. And especially right now, when you're thinking, what's going to happen? Are we going to go into a recession? We got inflation going on. Our property value is going to fall. Our default rate's going to go up. Yes. And guess what? If you're a real estate investor going, oh boy, there's going to be a lot of foreclosure properties. No, there's not. I'm going to buy the note on the property before you even see it at a foreclosure sale.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense because it actually costs the bank money to foreclose. And then they've got holding costs because they're holding it, nobody's paying it, and attorney fees, like you said, and it could drag out. And you had an example earlier of a note you looked at, somebody hadn't made a payment in 4 years.
Yeah.
So again, using your analogy, add some zeros behind that, that can be very cost prohibited to a bank. And if you understand fractional reserve banking, they need those deposits and that money to lend because that's their book of business. And so if it's freezed up, they're not going to be around for much longer. So that's absolutely brilliant.
Absolutely. And you know what? Banks like it. That's the other thing. This is not going to go away because banks like it, because you're right. They don't have a huge staff of attorneys anymore. They don't have to do that nationwide. They don't have to pay a bunch of attorneys. They don't need a staff to reach out to people. They can just mail them a thing saying, hey, if you don't pay, we're going to, they might threaten foreclose, but the note's just going to be sold. And the banks are going to sell them at a discount because number one, they have to sell them at a good price. But number two, it would cost them more to foreclose anyway. When you factor in time, so it's worth it for them, much better for them to go, hey, we don't need this huge loss mitigation department anymore. Get rid of that. We'll just bundle up these notes and sell them, take our discount that way and move on. And because of the penalty aspect, makes tremendous more sense to do it that way. So we're flush in this, meaning that we see these assets that are non-performing way before a foreclosure investor is going to see that. The game has changed. In fact, I have clients, I work with people on a one-on-one personal consulting basis. I mean, it truly is a mentorship program because I take them through every aspect, where to find them, how to do the research and everything through Zoom. And, we come in and find these things and, it's so much easier than having to go out and look for properties and go to foreclosure auctions and those sorts of things. I've got clients that specifically get into this business as a new way to buy real estate. And what they focus on, for example, is, well, I just want to end up with the real estate. So I don't want to do a loan mod. I don't want to work with people. Great. Let's focus on non-performing notes where the property is vacant. Okay. Or it's maybe 5 years of payments haven't been made, sort of thing. But for the most part, let's find proper notes, non-performing loans where the property's vacant. We don't have to deal with the person, and it's in a short foreclosure state in case we do that. So Georgia, for example, 90 days and less than $1,000 to foreclose in Georgia. Not a lot of people do. I'm in Florida. It's 12 months. It's 18 months to foreclose. We're a judicial state, and it's going to cost you about $3,500. Versus Georgia, where just north of us here, 90 days and less than $1,000, you buy a non-performing note on a vacant property, you're going to end up with that property. Now, maybe I can track the person down within those 90 days and get a deed in lieu anyway, quick claim deed. And but if not, I have to go through. Now I end up with the property. And you know what? It's good for these neighborhoods too. Some of these zombie properties, you remember that term, zombie properties? You don't hear it as much anymore. We cleaned all that stuff up. You couldn't find who owned that. We didn't need to. We got the debt on the property. We don't need a borrower's permission to start the foreclosure process. So we would foreclose, get those properties back. Great. Now let's improve it. Let's raise the tax base in that community. Let's help out the neighbors, because all the neighbors' property values were going down and everything else because of those zombie properties. We come in, we buy them cheap enough. What about the real estate investors? They find a few, but they don't find all the ones that we do because they're trying to find the person to sell the property to them. I'm buying the note. I don't need to find the seller.
Right. Right. And it's a lot of work and time to go to auctions to pick up houses, and this
Oh,
almost
there's a good old boy network too.
yeah, and yeah, for sure. Because I mean, I think we've all been to our fair share of, real estate auctions at the
Yeah.
court, footsteps. But I mean, this almost sounds like something that is done online. Like you don't have to go and, register and wait around for an auctioneer. And so is it done online through a platform or where you find the notes?
Yeah, there's multiple ways that you can find notes today. There's online trading platforms, okay, which is buyers and sellers get together. I got a note to sell. I'm going to post it for sale, and you got a note that or you're looking to buy notes, and you're going to go there, and we go into negotiation and disclose documents and all those sorts of things. There's also larger companies that sell in bulk, and those companies you register with, and they might send. Just this week from one company, they sent out what we call a tape in the industry. It's nothing more than an Excel spreadsheet, but they send you out this spreadsheet, and one of them had 250 notes on there, mixed bag, some performing, some non-performing. That you would sift through, and spreadsheets are actually pretty easy to work with because you can run your numbers. And you're right, you're not driving around town and not looking at properties. I don't even care where the property is really located. That's the last thing I consider where it's located, because I'll go to where the deals are. You think like a bank. You have your banker cap on, not your real estate cap. You're a banker, so I'll go to where the best deals are, and all the research today. If a deal's worth looking at. So I have a way of just going through and skimming and say, is this one even worth my time and effort, right? That's important too, right? You don't want to waste a whole bunch of time. So I've got 3 basic formulas that go, okay, this one's worth looking at, this one's not, moving on. The ones that are worth looking at, then it's so easy today because of technology. I can go right online and look up all the documentation, right? I can find the mortgages. I can find the deeds on the property. I can find other liens. I can see if they're paying their property taxes. I can find an estimation of value on the property today. So I'm just sitting on my computer doing all this stuff. And when you get good at it, I can completely evaluate a note, public records, everything else in less than 15 minutes in almost all cases, and know probably more about that note than the current note owner knows about that note. Now, if you're just beginning, it's going to take you a little longer. You got to learn the process to do this, but that's what I help people do. And then it's just a matter of negotiating and closing on it. So yeah, you don't have to drive around. You don't have to spend a bunch of time on and money and everything else looking at these things. You evaluate on there, but there's also security in it. So I can make an offer. If you're selling a note, Michelle, and I'm looking at buying it from you, I'll put an offer, but I'll put a contingency. I want to get here's my offer, $50,000, whatever it is, subject to an acceptable broker's price opinion, right? So I'm going to have a local real estate agent go out there and, put some eyes on it. They're my boots on the ground locally there, because it might be in Missouri. I'm here in Florida. So subject to an acceptable broker's price opinion, title report. Now, I've looked at all the information online. I know what's going to come up or not come up in the title report. But if you're a beginner, have a title report check your work, so to speak, right? It's only $120, $150 to get that done, $120 to get a BPO done. And by the way, I'm only going to spend that money if you and I have a tentative agreement, right? So we have an agreement, but it's subject to the BPO, the title report, and also I put in there further due diligence. Maybe you didn't have all the documentation yet. Maybe you did a loan modification yourself and you didn't provide that in the paperwork, or maybe I found something in the paperwork that was missing. I'm going to ask that we need to do. And once I get that all done, and I've got now pictures of the property and verified comparable sales and everything else, the closings are all online today too.
Wow.
It's crazy. I mean, people who know traditional real estate, they're closing. I always make a joke about it, but I won't go into the whole setup of the joke, but they just sit at a closing. It's like document after document after document that they're not reading, right? And with us in a note closing, there's 2 documents. If you're selling a note to me, you're going to do an assignment of mortgage and an allonge of the note. And for most transactions, that's it.
Wow.
And I don't even sign anything. You sign it because you're selling it to me. So there's nothing for me to sign. So I wire my money. We can do that through an escrow company. They verify the money's there. You're showing me the documentation online. We go, yep. release the funds, you get the funds, I get the paperwork. I have a servicing company then that will collect all the monthly payments. They'll send out the late letters. They'll account for all the money coming in, and they'll take out their $15 a month when the payments come in. And that's it. So, I do have to record my own documents. Guess what? That's done online today too. You can do e-recording in almost every single county. So I just go online, say, hey, I have to record this assignment of mortgage. Boom, boom, boom. It structures it for that particular county. Hit record. Great. Pay the $20 or whatever it is. Record it. Done. I own the note. Service company sends out the letters. Now I start getting the monthly payments.
Yeah, I mean, talk about true, mailbox money. This sounds like a fantastic opportunity for somebody that may have a full-time job, but has some evening hours or weekend hours to do the research on it. I mean, what a great way to create, a passive income stream on the side. I mean, that's wonderful.
I mean, you could really an hour a week, 2 hours, three. You can find 2-3 hours a week to look at some assets and learn the process. I have a one-on-one session with a brand new client this evening, and he's a physician, and he's a busy guy, but he knows he's got to get his money working for him, and he's busy, but he's going to find an hour or two a week. It's not a big ask, if you know where to look, what ratios you're looking for, and it absolutely is. The type of investment that everything is at your fingertips today. It's crazy. When I first started, by the way, no cell phones, no internet. We had to physically go to the courthouse. Remember microfiche,
Yeah.
I think we called it, and all that. We had to go through that. Big dusty books, just to find somebody who owned a note. Today, completely different.
Yeah, that's amazing. So I'm going to see if we have any questions. So while I open it up for questions, how can people learn more about you, your course, your book? Where can they find you? I know we have your email up, but are there other ways that people can find you?
Yeah, sure. If you want if you want to see this business for you, go to Amazon and just pick up my book. I think it's $29, something like that. Real Estate Without Renters is the title, or you can just search by my name. And that's an easy way to start, because it's a very detailed book. It's an easy read though too, so you could do that. But if you really wanted to hear more about the business and how I can help you, you can send me an email there at Kevin at kevinshortell.com. And what I'll do, I'll send you a scheduler link, and we'll just schedule a 30-minute phone call, and we'll put it on the calendar, and I'll just talk to you about the business and what I can do to help you, and see if it's right for you. I've got programs that start as easy as, hey, I just want education, dip my toes in the water, so to speak, to full mentorship where it's you and I unlimited. I have this unlimited one-on-one sessions, where you go to Calendly, and you pick a date and a time. I have a new client. He's been with me 1 month. And he really wanted to get going. He scheduled 2 Zooms with me, one-on-one appointments, up to an hour each, every single week. And he's in his first month. He's closed on 2 deals, and we're looking at his third already. And so it's literally unlimited. You go in there, if the appointment's available, you can book it. And I work with people at that level from start to finish. So if you want to talk, just Kevin at Kevin Shortell. I'll get your email. Please reference Michelle, so I know that where you came from, and I'll send you a link, and we'll set up a call.
That'd be great. In the comment section, I'll put the Amazon link for your book, so people can find it easily. So we do have one question.
Sure.
Are there any tax benefits to note investing? We didn't touch on that. And that's a great question.
Are there any tax benefits? Not like you would have in traditional real estate, where you can take depreciation and things of that nature. We pay taxes on the interest that we make. So when you're receiving these monthly payments, your part of that is principal, part of that is interest, right? So you're just paying the taxes on the interest that you have there. So no, our tax deductions are the business involved in if you're paying somebody to do the due diligence, or you have business expenses in finding these assets, of course that's deductible, but that's pretty much in anything. If you're looking to do this on a tax-free basis or a tax-deferred basis, this is an allowable asset for self-directed IRAs, 401ks, covered ill accounts, you name it. So a lot of my clients do use their IRA and 401k money to invest in these assets as well.
Yeah, I have a EQRP, and
Mhm.
it is an allowable investment, which is brilliant. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, that's great. Hey, Kevin, thank you so much for joining us today. I will put the link to your book in the comment section so people can
Sure.
find it easily.
Yeah.
Please reach out to Kevin. He has a wealth of knowledge. This has been very enlightening. Like I said, when we started, I knew very little, just it existed, but not the nuts and bolts and all the different creative ways that you can work with people to help them stay in their home,
Yeah.
and create passive income. So thank you so much for joining me.
Sure.
It's been amazing.
Yeah.
Been
Hey, worst
amazing.
case, everybody, you can Google me. I'm not hard to find. I've got a YouTube channel and all that other stuff. So you can find me. KevinShortell.com or realestatewithoutrenters.com is the website. But be more than happy to talk with everybody. So thanks, Michelle. I hope everybody enjoyed that.
You bet. You bet. All right. We will see you later.
Okay. Bye, everybody. Have a good day.
Bye.